Greetings and welcome to episode number 5 of You Had Me at Halo, where we talk about everything past, present, and future of one of gaming's most storied franchises. This has been a busy news week for Halo, and in addition to that, we are just a few days away from the next gen. So a lot of our discussion today is going to be around next gen technology and what that means to Halo. We're also going to step back into the past and talk about how Halo has pushed technology previously. What will cross-gen and being a 10-year platform mean to Halo's potential for innovation? We'll also touch on the leadership changes that happened over the last couple of weeks at 343 and what it means to Halo's release. Finally, we'll get into some of the smaller news items of the week. First, let's meet today's Spartan team. Joining me today is Spartan Mike, aka Kage Maru. What's up, Mike?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Next up, we have Spartan Ursel, aka Soul Blazer.
Yo, I am known as the Yo guy.
Next up, we have Spartan Jesse, aka Don Cabeza. What's going on, Jesse?
Insert witty line here.
You need to do your homework next time. Next, we have Spartan Austin, aka Proven.
Hey, everyone.
Finally, as your host today, Spartan One Bad Mother. All right. So
first, you're forgetting about me. It's Special Ed. How's it going, blokes?
Oh God.
Yeah, special guest. All right, please edit that one. So first thing I want to talk about today is an interview that Phil Spencer did with iJustine. And in this interview, he did touch a little bit on Halo Infinite. And he was talking about the multiplayer and technical advancements. So I'll go ahead and just read this quote from his interview. The multiplayer in Halo Infinite, I think, is going to be special when we talk about it, Spencer said. We know for many people, Halo CE started with us lugging our Xboxes around, plugging them in together, and playing console multiplayer for many of us for the first time. So I'm excited for what we'll get to see and what we'll get to show. I think the team is building on what they did in Halo 5, and the multiplayer in Halo 5 was received very well. So it's cool to see the team continue to iterate on things that the community loves. And then he goes into talking about esports. But the main thing I want to really focus on here is the fact that he says that it's going to be special, and he talks about technical advancements. And, I guess what we could do is really this would be our opportunity to kind of step back in the past and talk about, what Halo has meant to us in terms of technology advancements or new generations, on previous consoles. So let's go ahead and start with that. I'm going to go ahead and go to you, Mike. What's your stories and what have you thought of with Halo in terms of what it's meant to technology?
Yeah, it's kind of odd because a lot of times people don't contribute Halo or the series of Halo to pushing boundaries when it comes to technology. But I think I mentioned it in a podcast before. Halo 1 was still one of the best looking games, the shooters that generation. And I mean, a lot of that had to do with how much more powerful the Xbox was. But I mean, in some ways, I think Halo 1 looked better than Halo 2. But even Halo 2, even though you could almost argue that they try to do too much with Halo 2. But still, normal maps was a huge thing at the time with Halo 2. That was everywhere in Halo 2. Halo 1 had bump mapping. It had expansive worlds. I mean, I can't think of many shooters, even on PC back then, maybe Unreal, that came out in 98 that had expansive open worlds or open-ish worlds like that.
Yeah, I don't even know if I remember Unreal having it. Mike, do you remember with Halo? Were you one of those guys that was zooming in on the grass and just amazed?
Amazed. The grass impressed me, but it was more so the rocks, because Halo was also one of those games that had high frequency textures or detail textures that you can zoom in on the rocks, and they still had little divots and remain sharp. But between the lighting, there's a lot of stuff and then you go to Halo 3, and granted Halo 3, the resolution wasn't great and the character models sucked. They lacked polygons, but I don't know, Halo 3 or Halo Reach, you really don't see shooters that have that scope even to today. And the lighting, I mean, what they did with the HDR in Halo 3 was overboard. It's almost like one of the technical directors was like, I want to do this, and we're gonna make it work no matter what sacrifices we need to make it work. But I mean, right now you load up Halo 3 on the Master Chief Collection, and the textures still hold up really well. and then you go to Reach, and Reach had its rough parts, but it had object-based motion blur, high polygon counts, great character models. Even arguably larger battlefields than we saw in Halo 3. I mean, I don't know. Then you go to Halo 4, and Halo 4, in some ways, it was a step back from Halo Reach, but in other ways, it was a step forward. It had more refined art, but the texture resolution kind of took a hit, and the lighting kind of took a hit in some ways, but it was better in other ways. Like, it just, I don't know. The whole series, even Halo 5 to some extent, with it running at a lock 60 frames, even on the piece of crap VCR, it's an amazing series. So I think for me, that's kind of where my disappointment with Infinite came from. But the whole series, I can point to aspects where it might have not looked, like Halo 3 might have not looked as good as, say, Killzone 2, but it wasn't trying to, and it was doing different things.
Yeah, I think those are some really good points. Jesse, you've been around for a while, just like us. so why don't you go next and tell us what Halo's meant over the years to you?
For me, it started out, it was all about co-op and having split screen couch co-op, because it was just me and my brother. We couldn't afford 2 TVs, 2 systems, and like trying to run a LAN together, because I mean, even the internet wasn't a thing on consoles for the most part at that point. And moving from that to split screen to eventually being able to do it online when Xbox Live became a thing and we made a little more money. Still mainly split screen because we couldn't always afford 2 of the same system. But and that's what the Master Chief Collection has turned into, is once it worked, and it always worked well, or it worked-ish. I guess the host, it worked well. I was normally the host. And the peer-to-peer connection was truly awful, but now it works flawlessly, and it's just about co-op play for me. I was never huge on multiplayer, and having something that looked nice and ran okay while the 2 of us were there able to play it together, probably beating the campaign in Halo 1 and 2 together like a combined 150 times, because we couldn't afford a lot of games.
Well, for a while,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying for a while it was the only thing we could play on the original Xbox. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, we had Brute Force, and we tried to play that, but it was like 5 frames per second split screen. God. So yeah, but yeah. I like the multiplayer, and I would play it here and there, but it always came back to the replayability of the campaign. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Reach, even a little bit with ODST, being able to just go through them, replay them in co-op. Even now with my wife on the TV next to me, the 3 of us playing through them together, I think we've probably gone through the entire thing 3 or 4 times together, and we'll probably end up doing the whole freaking thing again with the Master Chief Collection's Next Gen update. And when Infinite comes out, I imagine I'm probably going to put like 2,000 hours into it, and a lot of that will be co-op.
Yeah, you bring up some good points. I think a lot of us forget about that, and Phil mentioned that in that article, or in that interview with iJustine, was the LAN stuff. Back then, getting 16 people together was just like a wow moment. That was just something that was just revolutionary. That you couldn't get that anywhere else on any other platform. How about you, Austin? I know that you haven't been around as long as us, but like, what are some of the technical aspects of Halo? Like, has it ever meant something to you in terms of representing technology or next gen innovation, anything like that?
Yeah, I know it's only been 10 years because you're so young, but through the entirety of your life, how is it?
I think of him as a kid.
Okay, so Halo 2, so when Halo 2 came out and I actually started playing it on the 360, I was like 9 or 10 years old, I think.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
360.
I had a speak and spell at 10 years old.
You're playing it through backwards compatibility?
yeah.
The tiny
Well,
run spin.
I did because I remember getting the 360 and when did that come out? 2006, 2005,
7?
I believe.
Six, I think.
6,
What?
yeah. So
Halo
the
360?
360. No, the 360.
2005, November.
2005,
Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause I remember playing Halo 2 over Xbox Live. That was the first like online game I ever played. And the thing about Halo for me, like I've never thought of it as like I think the graphics have always been nice, but the thing that makes it I've always thought of Halo as something like every Halo has advanced multiplayer or campaign in some way. Like for Halo 2, obviously Xbox Live. When I think of Halo 3, I think of all the innovations that brought. So I've always thought of Halo as something that kind of innovates, and I mean some of the past few Halos haven't really innovated the way. Like they've been good games, but they really haven't brought anything as new as like what Halo 2.
Yeah,
Oh no, he fell into the void.
great point.
No, I'm here still.
That's a good one,
I
too.
just stopped talking.
No, those are really good points, especially with the original Halos. When you compare them to the first three to everything else. How about you, So? Like, what is the technology and stuff like that meant for you?
Well, like Don, most of my Halo experience, especially when I was younger, was more so about split screen, co-op, running the campaigns together. But before I played Halo, I used to play GoldenEye a lot with my brothers, and it was a really fun experience. I don't remember it too much. I was very little, but I do remember that even back then when we switched over to Halo, you could tell it was significantly different. Halo 1, I mean. Like, when we played GoldenEye, we never really played seriously. It was always just having fun, putting on the big head mod, and it felt like you couldn't play the game seriously for whatever reason. Halo 1 shows up, and suddenly it's full-on competition, right? And no mercy
Competent controls.
Yes, 100%. And I remember some of the physics in Halo 1 made me crack up so bad. There was this file browser, or before torrenting. Do you guys remember Kazaa and LimeWire?
Oh,
Yep.
LimeWire, yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
I do
I
remember.
know you're a thief if you use them.
Well, back then,
So many viruses.
oh my god, yeah! Don't even talk to me. We used to download pictures, just pictures, or maybe like little videos off of LimeWire.
Sure, you did.
No. Like one thing I downloaded was, one thing was apparently a new Dragon Ball thing that was completely fake. But either way, one thing we downloaded was this Halo video, which today would just be a random video on YouTube. And it was had some music playing. I don't remember it exactly. And it was people that got a bunch of grenades. I'm sure you guys know where I'm getting here. Got a bunch of Marines and a bunch of people right on top of their car, blew it up, and just flew to like the top of the map. Mostly in Silent Cartographer. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. That stuff was in the form. Was that YouTube back then? I can't remember where people.
There wasn't
posted
YouTube back then.
that
That's what I'm saying.
No, I was
No,
like,
I
where
could've
did it
sworn-
come from?
I could have sworn they had a montage
Yeah.
video on one of the
They did.
Xbox discs for the Xbox magazine.
Really?
I think so.
Wasn't it like the red versus blue or something, right?
No, the red versus blue was the machinima that started, but and it might have been inspired by it, but one of the original what do you call it, trends was you get a bunch of Marines, you take them around the corner through that arch rockway.
Yep.
You would kill them, and then you go back, get another couple more Marines, and you do this like 3 or 4 times. And then you basically have like 8 dead Marines, and each of them should have like 2 grenades. And then you just chuck a grenade underneath the Warthog and see if you can flip it over that stone arch. It was great.
It was a lot of fun. Or if you were on the Warthog when you blew it up, you go flying and you see the entire
Yeah.
map.
Yep.
I honestly miss the old physics from the Halo CE because
Yeah.
those were ridiculous. They were over the top, but they were also amazing at that time because
100%.
games didn't really have. See, that's like what stood out to me. I'm glad you mentioned the physics because the graphics were good, and like I mentioned to Mike, I do remember like first time we talked about it in one of the previous shows. You know, I jumped on that demo with that night level and the snipers, and I remember just like zooming in all around, and like every time I got close to things, I was like shocked that it didn't get really blurry, you know. So that did impress me, but really more than that, you know, coming from the PC side of things, I was like PC Master Race back then. You know, playing System Shock 2 and Half-Life, which were pretty decent looking games at that time. So I don't think I had the same lift in the graphics that the people that came from the N64, you know, from those graphics, it was a lot less of a jump. Or that was bad English. It was less of a jump for me. My words are all mixed up. But the thing that did impress me was how the physics and the AI in CE, like how they just all came together. It was like you had wider worlds, you had you know, the elites that would just go and hide when you had their shields down, and you know they try to flank you, and you know you had the soldiers, so you had more things on the screen than I was ever used to. Because even on a PC, you didn't really get that much, you know, like in Half-Life and System Shock stuff like that. You didn't get all those extra bodies like when you get dropped on the beach. So I thought that was really impressive. But I am surprised nobody mentioned it. You know, obviously we all remember Halo 2 was pretty much defined the matchmaking that everybody still uses today.
Hey, I mentioned it.
Oh, okay. Well, you didn't mention
I'm
it.
kidding.
Well,
I'm not.
I was actually going to mention about how Proven made a really good point of, on top of, you know, the pure whatever engine or graphical boundaries they pushed, just about every single Halo, all the way up until Halo 4, unfortunately, they introduced just amazing features. Maybe ODST, you can argue too. You know, the original Halo had an awesome not netlink. Oh my god, system link feature.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Halo 2, like you just mentioned, it revolutionized matchmaking, introduced matchmaking. Yep. And then, you know, with Halo 3, we had the theater mode and the screen sharing and clip sharing. And I mean, it's one of the things that I miss.
No, I think you're right. I mean, it was almost an expectation. It's almost like, okay, well, what's Halo going to push the boundaries on, you know, this time? You know, first it was physics and AI. Yeah.
Someone took the name, that's for sure.
Well, honestly, I thought Warzone was going to be it. When they first introduced Warzone, I thought, okay, this is where this is going to innovate, and I think it was. We'll get into it later. I think maybe it's a transitional thing to maybe something more impressive, but yeah, like Proven was saying, and you were reiterating, Mike, is it seemed like for the first 3, it was like always something. It was, you know, starting off with just all around technical aspects in the campaign to matchmaking. And then, you know, with Halo 3 wasn't as visually impressive, but, you know, that's where you introduce the Forge. And, you know, we don't have John here with us. I know that's probably his favorite, but that was revolutionary. And you kind of think about that today, you know, like that. There was nothing like that on consoles back then.
Forge came with which Halo?
With Halo 3.
Halo 3. Right?
Halo 3,
yeah.
And that's where you... Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Well, you know, to be fair to 343, they did those kinds of revolutions or new features kind of slowed down after Halo 3, even with Bungie. I mean, with what ODST, even though ODST was a smaller title, we got Firefight, I guess.
Yeah.
And then in Reach, there was like an evolution of Firefight that I argue would be worse. And then, I mean, they It was more of a refinement.
Yeah, I mean,
instead of
yeah.
a
Reach had its own
revolutionary
game mode too, right? Invasion, and then people kind of stopped playing.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved Invasion. I just don't know if it was well balanced
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Rent-A-Geddon was the best thing ever.
What now?
The firefight mode where it's nothing but grunts, so you can just headshot them nonstop for half an hour straight. That was like my jam.
It's a shame nothing caught on.
Right.
Yeah, Halo Reach introduced a bunch of good ideas, but I thought that was the first Halo where they kind of had more negative ideas than like positive ones. That's kind of where
Yeah, it's almost like their good ideas or good designs or gameplay types were overshadowed by the Bloom controversy and subtle
and armor
good gameplay.
abilities.
Armor abilities and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need that.
I feel like the 3-year cycle might have been detrimental to the series. If you know what I mean.
It's possible.
I
Plus,
agree.
there was just so much more competition. Like people caught up.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
100%.
hard. They weren't a mile ahead of everyone on console controls anymore.
Mm-hmm. And the online anymore.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that was kind of disappointing because they always seem to like look for the edge, and you know, with 4 and 5, it's not like they didn't try. Like in some way, it was like almost like they're trying to do it. You know, they're trying to do the co-op thing, right? The what do you call that mode that I really didn't?
Spartan Ops.
Spartan Ops. Yeah. So like I think there was good intentions.
Yeah,
Oh,
there
go
were
ahead.
some good intentions, but I remember for Halo 5, I watched, I think it was the Vidoc or whatever they do.
Yeah.
And I remember they were saying, they were like, the co-op that we're introducing, we want it to be as big as a revolution as split screen and dual wielding.
Yeah.
And it like, so the co-op in that game, like it was good, but like I felt like what they were trying to innovate on wasn't like too crazy. Like the co-op was cool, but like it didn't really add that much to the like what we've already had.
They said that with the co-op in Halo 5.
Yeah, I would have to pull up the video, but I remember
able to res everyone and
and they were saying they want to be like they think co-op is like the biggest innovation in the Halo series since like dual wielding. I was like, okay, I didn't agree with that, but
Was this before or after the game was out?
this was before the game was
Remember,
out.
you had news reports that it had this one fancy dude who was worked on some big game in co-op mechanics. I kind of forgot what it was.
It's Tim Longo. He worked on Star Wars.
Yes.
It was Star Wars. It was
that
Commando.
was-
I forgot what was the game?
It was Star Wars, I believe.
It's like Star Wars Commando, I think.
Republic Commando.
Yeah.
On the OG Xbox, yep. No, people really liked that game too. I never played it, but people really did. I think a lot of people were excited about the co-op because he was the guy behind that game. I think we might have mentioned it before. You know, Josh Holmes on an exit interview, not an exit interview, but when he moved off of 343 and he talked, you know, he admitted that Halo 5 was supposed to be a lot bigger, a lot more ambitious, and just things they couldn't make it work within either the time or the technology. So I feel like that was like one of those things that burned him out or stressed him out. You know,
I feel like Halo 5's I think Halo 5 is overall a good game, but in many ways it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah.
Well, that's always the thing, though. Like if you kind of don't scope something right, or you get too ambitious sometimes, and then you realize you can't do it, then you kind of have to go back. And at that point, you're kind of stuck, you know, having to play it safe, right? So sometimes with like development, like it's not just in video game development, it could be any sort of technology. Sometimes if you shoot for the moon, you know, you don't get the star, you know, or you shoot for the stars, you don't get the moon, you end up back on Earth.
Or just floating away in space.
Yeah, or you just go, you just get stuck in
Straight into the sun.
outer space. Yeah, you know, and just get into like this
I feel like
purgatory or
Halo 5
something.
was ambitious within its own scope, kind of like where it could be, it tried to be. It had so many like limitations or so many, for whatever reason, it couldn't do what it really wanted to do. I'm confident that they did not want to have you fight the Warden Eternal like 5 times. You know what I mean? I don't think that was the plan from the beginning.
Or just the fact that like some of those levels you just walk through and it's like, was there supposed to be something else here?
Oh,
You know?
I felt like they were supposed to have like dialogue options or something, but there's just nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when he said something bigger, I think they were probably, it was along the lines of what they're trying to do in Infinite now. You know, maybe more a wider game or just something a little bit more.
It's interesting. When I think of special, when I think of next gen or new technology, the first thing I think of is more. You know what I mean? More people, more vehicles, more AI, more something.
Like more density.
Yes, or more population. So like Warzone, for example, was the first time Halo's done 24, right? Combatants on one field. I feel like maybe they want to go even farther, which isn't necessarily a good thing because more is not always better.
Right. Yeah, people don't seem to. I always hear that too when they talk about like a console being held back, and it's like, well, you can have more enemies on the screen, and it's like, well, we've done that to death now, where we get so many things on the screen, it's just not fun anymore. So you can do that, and it's just hard to balance. Then it's like, well, how do you make these 20 enemies not overpower you?
Yeah,
right?
and I mean, if it's PvP, like in Halo, in Arena, you can take on 2 people if you're good. You know what I mean? But if there's a significant amount of people, doesn't matter how good you are, you meet 5, you're gonna immediately get destroyed, right?
Right.
So are you forced to move with your team? Do you just like not meet that many people? I don't know. I feel like it's not necessarily a good thing.
What are we talking about? Competitive multiplayer or
just multiplayer in general? Like, let's say, for example, they wanted to make a bigger mode, more than 24. Let's say they wanted to do 32, 16 on 16, like a continuation of Warzone, which is what I think they're doing personally. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing.
They would need to have focus points for that to work. Like a 32 player just team deathmatch would be too much of a clusterfuck,
exactly,
in my opinion.
Yeah, it would probably be a conquest style, battlefield mode.
All right, that's a great. I was going to say that's a great transition. So I think we're going to move into our next topic.
That's awkward transition.
Sorry,
I made it weird. Yeah.
Yes, it was totally you.
So let's go ahead and talk about the next gen now. So we talked about the past and some of the things that Halo advanced specifically over the first 3 games and some of the major changes they made that have had an impact, I think, on the industry as a whole. And then maybe how it's slowed down with 4 and 5. So now let's move it on to like, how does that, let's think about that with next gen. And Phil brought that up, and I think he brought that up with multiplayer, offering something special, future technical advancements. But I guess we can open that up to like everything, campaign and multiplayer. So I'll let you keep going, Sol, because I know you kind of were starting on that. So
no, I have the perfect answer.
Okay, do it.
Battle Royale. Boom.
Innovation.
All right, I'm leaving the call now. That's too perfect a point. I'm never going to do better.
Even though I feel like Halo could honestly do a really... Oh, God, he actually left.
He did.
Welcome back. I feel like Halo 5 could actually do a really good Battle Royale. You know what I mean? You have so many weapon types from Warzone.
We've talked about it before.
It's... and I'm not even a fan of Battle Royale. Sorry, I approve.
Okay. Like, if they put all their effort into it, it would be good. I just, like, for example, Apex Legends is a game I love, and, like that's the main focus for that game, and I don't think Respawn, like, updates the game enough. Like, they do it at their own pace, which is fine, but, like, I just can't imagine 343 being able to put enough effort into it to make it worth it. Because they have to focus on everything else as well.
Yeah, I mean, like Fortnite, for example, has updates left and right, but that's at a very human cost, right?
Yes.
That its players don't know about or care about, but it's there.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do it, but it's... what were you saying there, Jesse?
That's for it to be iron. They don't care.
All right.
Go through for that.
Yeah.
So timestamp that so we can edit that out.
Mother. Him.
Well, I mean, they could do it. It costs money. At the end of the day, it's just manpower, right? Like you can do Battle Royale, but I don't know that's necessary innovation. Just putting a lot more.
It's just
I
following
was kidding
the trend
about the
again. That's
innovation part.
That's
literally the opposite of innovation.
Unless they do their own spin on it.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It can really work, and I don't want to say that they can they potentially could even innovate that game mode. My concern is I don't want them to just add the game mode just to have it.
Yeah.
I don't want them to follow in Fallout 76's footsteps where they're just going to announce a battle royale and expect people to get excited over it.
Well, the problem, like Fallout 76's battle royale was very fun. Battlefield 5's battle royale was very fun. But if a battle royale is not free to play, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, but you would imagine that if they did have a battle royale mode, it would fall on the free to play.
Yeah, it would for here. So you have to look at it like the Fallout 76 one, very good, but it died immediately because you have to buy it. So like even being good isn't good enough if you don't follow pretty much the only monetization path that has worked for any of them, and that is you make it free. Yeah. And then and you can tie it in, like Fortnite's monetization path started with Save the World and then really took off with the Battle Royale. So if you've already got a monetization path in the multiplayer mode for Halo Infinite, which we'll get into later, then you've got those hooks already. It could lead to and help sustain the cost of running a Battle Royale.
So let's say they don't want to do a Battle Royale. Let's say they want to take Warzone, take it to the next level, Warzone 2.0. How would they do that? That's what I'm kind of thinking about.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going, right? Like when he's saying, because I'm reading the Spencer quotes again, when he talks about them offering something special, and he says, and there are some technical challenges the team has set for themselves on multiplayer that I'm really encouraged to talk about when we get there. So it's like, what does that mean? Because that's not just that, to me, that doesn't mean 100 players in an arena, right? Yeah. That's got to mean something more advanced. And Warzone is in of itself, like I'm not a Warzone fan, to be honest, but at the same time, a lot of times those first efforts can become transitions to something much
Warzone felt like a half step in a sense.
Yeah. So what do you think that could be? Where do you think the next level is?
You know how at the end of a Warzone firefight match, you would fight 2 or 3 Warden Eternals? Now you're going to fight 6.
Jesse's brought all the great takes today.
Thank you. I've been thinking about them all week.
I mean, considering that Warzone was kind of followed the MOBA trend, I don't know if I agree that there's much of a future with that game mode.
What do you mean by follow the MOBA trend?
I always assumed that isn't it kind of like MOBA mixed with Halo Team Deathmatch?
It's like controlling bases.
It was PvPvE.
I mean, isn't that what MOBA is?
No, MOBAs are about the creeps that run their lanes, and you've got your classes, and it's all about balance. It would be the exact opposite of what a MOBA is.
It'd be like WoW, some WoW PvP, like Arathi Basin, or I guess no one here plays WoW.
Yeah, like it's a no. I played it for way too much.
Yeah, never mind. Yeah, just
it is a mix of PvP with PvE, and they work off of each other.
Yeah,
but,
isn't that what
a
MOBA
MOBA is.
Oh, okay. You're talking.
Well, no, so I'm saying that's what Warzone is. A MOBA has like a very distinct. There are 3 paths.
Yeah.
There are creeps that go down them. There are towers you can't get by. Like that's the MOBA.
Yeah,
thing.
MOBAs are completely different. That's why I was a little confused.
Okay. I've heard a few people describe it as like.
Well, I think the similarities. Right?
Mobile.
Yeah.
I guess there's one base and another base. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few things that I would say are similar. It's there's PvP, while there's PvE, they work off each other. You each have a base that you have to defend. The base defend is like the biggest part. That would be MOBA.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But none of the stuff around it.
I mean, it always just seemed like that was a game mode. Because that was meant to take over for Firefight, right? That was supposed to be like the next evolution.
I thought it was like Invasion.
They eventually they put Firefight back into it when people were like, "Hey, we want Firefight."
And Warzone Firefight is one of the funnest modes
of it in there
in Halo 5.
Yeah, that's hundreds of hours in that. Yeah. It's very fun.
But that's the thing. Like, if you introduce a new mode and people are like, "No, we want the old stuff," I don't know if I consider that a success or something that they would build off of.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think actually let's go over to Austin. Austin, you've been quiet for a few minutes here. I know you play a ton of multiplayer. Anything pop into your head in terms of like what that might mean in terms of a special multiplayer and something that's technically advanced?
Well, we don't really know, but all the rumors have pointed to it's going to be a really big mode. So I'm assuming it's going to be one of those. I just get the feeling that well, we see for the campaign that they're trying to make it a huge open world. So I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that when they talk about like the Halo is gonna be technically impressive, it's just gonna be a really large map with a lot of players on it with a lot of stuff happening. Because I think that's what 343 really wants to do. Like they seem interested in making really large modes.
When they talked about the subspace engine, one thing they said is we can have more characters and more vehicles on the screen than ever by a very large number.
That's actually really
it'd be
interesting.
cool if we could replicate that Halo Reach cinematic. You know what I'm talking about? Where they're all driving.
You're talking about oh yeah, the beginning of Tip of the Spear.
Yeah, Tip of the Spear. You're right. Yeah, they could.
Oh yes.
That'd be pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. Very impractical, but cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I could imagine some like 32. I don't even know what the player count would be, but it's like 32v32 on a really large map, something like that.
You have like weapons.
So like Halo Battlefield.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. Like, I feel like 343 like for Halo 5 they focus on arena, but I just get the feeling that 343 really likes large multiplayer modes. Because
I've got a really sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've got a really good name for Battlefield Halo. It'll get the kids involved. They'll love it. Baylo, like your bay.
We're just gonna edit it. Like timestamp everything Jesse says.
Why do you hate children so much?
What about like more than 2 teams? Is that something multiplayer games have ever done? I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
that would be
like multi-team.
Yeah,
I mean, there are even modes
like a 4-person free-for-all, 4-team free-for-all, or 3-team free-for-all, that kind of thing.
I mean, they have it now, but it's in smaller teams. It's kind of like almost arena-ish.
Yeah,
you know,
with 8 people,
small
right?
team. But yeah, what about like a I don't know, like an 8 versus 8 4-way kind of thing?
Like that. Yeah,
that would be kind of neat.
That would be like
Unreal games do
massive.
That'd be just a mess.
Yeah.
That would be one of those things where it has to be directed, or there has to be focal points or objectives to kind of give some guidance to that. And I can also see them still, because they've been working with pro players for over a year now. So I can still see there being a big arena focus.
I feel like arena focus has to be there no matter what. Like that's
Oh, it's going to be there. Well, they already got their arena teams helping them, so which I'm good with. I know some people are not fans of that because they thought that Halo 5 was too sweaty, but that's one of the reasons I actually love that game.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that you have those guys involved, because they do understand balancing probably as well as any developer is going to understand balancing. Like what works and what breaks the game and things like that. So it makes me comfortable when they're adding these new moves and things like that. But so those are some good theories, I guess. Aside from the theories, is there something that you would want to see, or like if you were just dreaming it up, like what would just get you super excited?
I mean, it's not a theory yet. My concern is his technical innovation is like the 120 frames per second for next gen. Because if it's in context that we're talking about only next gen, you can't really do a game mode that's next gen exclusive with it being a cross gen title.
Oh, that's true.
So what does that mean for next gen?
Unless this game mode is next gen exclusive.
Or tied into the cloud in a way that pulls off processing power from last gen.
Well, I mean, if it's a free-to-play multiplayer.
What Jesse's saying, that's another. I don't see that going over well. I don't see anything being exclusive next gen until they drop current gen, which we can get to later. But
year or two.
They can technically do it though. If multiplayer is free to play, they could do it and not lose any. You're not paying for it, so it's not. Like
don't forget. don't forget the fact that Halo is going to be running off of. I mean, you're going to have all those Series X APUs in the cloud,
Yeah.
so you can run a lot of different things.
Oh, that's
from
true.
that are not
Well,
latency sensitive in the cloud.
Yeah, but they're
especially if you're
supposed to
talking
be doing that throughout this year. And if we don't know when Infinite's going to launch, but if Halo Infinite does launch within the first half of the year, there's no guarantee that xCloud is going to be upgraded with the Series X hardware by that point.
Mm.
No, I mean it's a
And
good
it was
point.
originally going to launch well before the upgrade.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's true.
and
That's true. You're right.
I mean, Jesse does make a good point that if they're just using cloud,
Sea of
kind of
Thieves
cloud.
style.
Yeah, Sea of
Something that
Thieves or,
synchronizes and pulls off resources from the local hardware so that you can have these big ass environments, these large servers that can
like,
everyone can sync up to, and it
Flight
doesn't
Simulator.
kill. Yeah, it doesn't kill performance on the local machine.
What are
doing
your
these
guys' thoughts on a what do you call
I
it?
hate it.
What is it called in Dark Souls?
Invasions?
Invasions?
An
Invasion.
invasion type where you go through the campaign, and we saw on the map where it looked like you had to assassinate
The knight?
the knight. And I'm not saying, but like, what would happen if like all of a sudden you get the pilot guy telling you that there's an elite assassin, like an elite assassin group or something coming after you, and they're humans. They're like a group of.
It sounds like Doom. Doom tried that, and it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
In
then
the
they
game? Like in the
eventually
campaign?
changed. Yeah, and then they eventually changed it to be its own mode because it didn't really work right. But it was an interesting concept.
It's interesting. Mm.
Well, because I was thinking like a human elite that has, and only one human elite at a time, but they have some grunts and jackals with them and stuff like that. And they've done Spartan versus Elite in the past. They're pretty much even characters.
For some reason, I feel like 343 doesn't want to engage in they kind of just want to keep Spartan versus Spartan. They don't seem interested in doing.
Yeah. Kind of
it would be cool if you could play as a brute or something, but I don't know if they're gonna do that.
I mean, that's a shame because I would really love to see them tackle invasion mode.
Yeah, invasion was cool.
Or even just play as an elite, right? Or a brute.
Yeah.
Well, just think about that. Like you have Warzone now, but what if it's, instead of that being like NPCs, those are actually like humans could drop in
Dead or something.
Yeah, they could just drop in and take over. Like you could drop in a game and just be one of the
I do wonder
elites or a warden.
With co-op,
cool.
would they have it be your chief and the people that drop in with you are? Or it's like everyone's going to be chief again, right?
I think so. Yeah, which I'm okay with. I mean, we had that for 3 games.
Well, it just depends on if Blue Team is back. I don't know if they will, but
well, they're definitely not at the beginning or in the part we saw. However deep that was into the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's going to be something about why they're not around it for the beginning, at least. So, could you be ODST or?
I think it's just chief
clones,
which makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, because Halo 1 and Halo 2 had chiefs. Halo 3 had
the elites.
Additional elites. Yeah.
And Halo 4 was back to chief. 4 copies.
Yeah.
So do you think Halo might ever mess with advanced physics, or is that something that's not a Halo type of innovation?
They own Havoc.
Well, I know they do. Yeah, so they own Havoc. They've been as far as what I assumed is they were doing some R&D on that. A few years ago, they rebranded it, and it sounded like they were trying to innovate it or advance it, and those things always take years. So I do wonder about that. And you remember, like, initially Crackdown was supposed to be that. We won't get into Crackdown. It didn't really turn out very well. But again, you never know like what they can take out of these things for like the next time.
Something one bad is the guy who led the development on Subspace. His previous job had been working on Havoc. I think that's yeah, that's what's his name? Let me look it up.
I don't see them. I don't see them putting a focus on it until they drop current gen hardware, because the
Daniel Giannetti was the name, or Danielle.
The CPUs in the current gen are just I mean, it all depends on if they're going to be
Oh,
pushing.
wonderful hardware.
I mean, if they're pushing 60 frames on current gen, there's no way in hell there's going to be any
Yes, they are.
physics.
You know, that's what I want to bring that up as well. Is all this talk about next gen and technology, but the game is kind of shackled to a really, really crappy processor. You know.
All right, let's use that to you're doing a really good job transitioning topics today. So, so we talked about this a little bit in the opening. Was the fact that this is a 10-year platform. It is going to start off as a cross-gen game. We don't know where that's going to go, and so I think a lot of this is just me thinking out loud here. I think a lot of the limitations that we're used to could change over time, but I want to kind of hear what everybody here thinks. I'll let you kind of finish up your thoughts there. So, but like what do we think in terms of, they're talking about technical advancements, and the thing we always hear is, okay, well, the Xbox One's going to hold that back, and I think Mike's right. Those Jaguar cores suck. They really do limit things, and I'm guessing that was a huge issue with Halo 5. So what is it that what is it you think could happen, or how do you see that playing out? Like, are these things something that we might see sooner or later, or sooner, or is it going to be more down the road that we're going to see these technical advancements?
You talking to me?
Yeah, go ahead. Might as well.
Well, I wanted to read. I wanted to read the line where he mentions the 10 years.
Okay.
So the paragraph, it was an interview with IGN. It goes, "We want Infinite to grow over time versus going to these numbered titles and having all that segmentation that we had before." By Chris Lee. It's Chris Lee saying it, sorry. "It's really about creating Halo Infinite as the start of the next 10 years for Halo, and then building that as we go with our fans and community." So I feel like there's some keywords in there. Though of course, technically you could say that, Chris Lee said this, which may mean it's not the case anymore, but we'll talk about that later. But I feel like the keywords for me when I read this was start. It's really about creating Halo Infinite as the start of the next 10 years for Halo. Which I don't think that means necessarily that Halo Infinite will be the next 10 years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you think that just means,
like,
you don't think that means
trilogy?
Possibly. I just think 10 years is a very, very long time for one game, unless it's like an MMO with 15 million players. You know what I mean?
Well, 10 years could just mean a roadmap. It doesn't necessarily mean it's one game.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking.
It doesn't have to. No, that's a good point. Austin, how about you, man? Like, what do you think about, with the next gen, and like, do you see it like having, like, being a major anchor? Is it going to be an anchor through the entire Halo Infinite, or do you think this is something that
are you talking about the Xbox One, like, holding the stuff back, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming within the 2, at most, like 3 years, they're gonna drop the Xbox One entirely. Kind of like how Destiny did. They eventually dropped. Like, I don't remember if Destiny 2 had a 360 version. But I just have a feeling like they're gonna release it, they're gonna support it, and then eventually they're gonna cut that off and continue to support the Series X and Series S version.
Yeah.
Because like, if they want to keep update, like, I'm assuming like they're not just gonna release the game and then just be done like updating it. They're gonna want to keep updating. So like they have to eventually cut off the Xbox, because it's just such an old piece of hardware at this point. Like, they have to cut it off.
Yeah, I know, and I understand why they need to have cross-gen support now. It's just too expensive for one system, but it just being shackled to those Jaguar cores. What about you, Mike? What do you think on that?
What Proven said, I think that holds a lot of weight, where I can see it being a good idea where, like, they support it cross-platform for 2 years, and then, they drop it at the 2-year mark or so, and then about year 3, they kind of do not a reboot, but an overhaul of the entire game. And like that's where they introduce the the next evolution of the graphics. Like and assuming they can apply that to pretty much everything similar to, there's no reason to think that what we're seeing with a lot of the current gen games into next gen can't also happen to Halo just because it's already a cross gen game.
Right.
And we see it with what we just talked about earlier with Warframe. And that game looks night and day to what it did. That's a game that I think Halo might actually model off of, just without being a live open world, but more of a focused campaign world. But there's nothing stopping them from doing the exact same thing. But you look at what Sony did with the Spider-Man games, stuff like that, where year 3, that's going to give, and then during that third year, that's all the content, like all of the additional content that they might release. I can see them, or I think it would be a good idea for them to say, if you're still on an Xbox One at that point, what are we going to be at, like 10 years, 11 years? If you're still on an Xbox One at this point, you can play in Halo Infinite, but it's going to be through streaming.
Yeah.
Because at least by then, all of the servers are going to have Series X hardware. So they spend that year migrating people to the streaming platform, and then year 3, boom, you got this, not relaunch, but this next gen overhaul where it gives the game a shot in the arm. And if they are going to keep it one game as a 10-year platform, they're going to have to do that anyways. They're going to have to do things to keep Halo relevant, not only as a game but graphically.
Yeah. They could release a subtitle too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think you make a really good point on that. And the graphics, you almost expect the graphics to keep getting better, even on the original release, right?
I don't know. I don't see it getting much better on the current gen systems.
Oh, not on the current gen. I'm talking about next gen.
Yeah.
I would. I would hope.
Like graphically, for example, you have WoW, right? That's a pretty good example of a platform, a game as a service. Started off in 2004. Every new expansion of World of Warcraft, they usually add a new minimum requirements, PC requirements. So even if your PC rig could have ran it, 2012, doesn't mean you can run the latest expansion.
And part of that 10-year as a plan thing, if you're getting large DLC content and you're dropping the support for a previous gen, that then opens it up. Okay, our tools have matured. We're all in on Velocity Architecture and RDNA 2 are now. Yeah. And GameCore is a mature platform. We can squeak out so much more performance. Those types of things, I definitely think it'll prove.
Yeah.
Does anybody here think we're maybe underrating like the potential for scalability and things, like even in a campaign? Like that's always been one of the most interesting aspects to me. Like the fact that with the tools they got, a lot of these game engines now are built around the scalability in mind. And I always wonder, it's
Doom runs on a Switch.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just graphics. Why couldn't you have more people in another version, or have denser environments, or have more animals kind of running around in the Series X version and things like that?
Well, that's the thing. I think eventually they're gonna have to cut it off, but they'll still support the Xbox One version. It just you can't do what they need to do for the next gen and PC versions while also supporting the Xbox.
So do you think 5 years from now, let's say 2025, you could play Halo Infinite Arena on the Xbox One?
I think so. I think you're always the multiplayer is always going to be a little bit different, and I think your arena modes, your base modes probably will work. But you guys have already brought up the streaming thing. I think everybody in the industry completely underrates that. Yep. When we think about it, it's like we think about it so far away, but really, if you look at where technology is going, where they project it, and where these $1 corporations are, what they're projecting, they think 5 years from now, we're if you're in a rural area, you get 10 millisecond latency,
Yep.
or somewhere between 10 to 20 millisecond. At that point, freaking, it doesn't matter. You can play in your toaster. And I think that
it's
go ahead,
sorry,
Phil.
it's not a coincidence that these billion-dollar companies are investing in game streaming. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well,
Things
it's
are moving
in
forward.
some ways, in some ways, it's the lowest barrier of entry
Yeah.
for these new companies, because investing
Oh, yeah.
in console hardware is expensive, it's risky. Whereas Amazon and Google, they already have a server infrastructure in place. It makes sense for them to do it because it's already falls in line with their business model.
Yeah.
Regarding thinking about it more while we were all talking about it, actually, I don't, even though I can possibly see like a graphical overall to the core game, I can see a scenario where and with Jesse mentioning that, say in 3 years, they launch a massive, like a sequel campaign size expansion. I can see it where they never block off. They always allow, so whatever, if they cut it off, let's say at the 2-year mark, you'll always be able to play that 2-year content on your Xbox One. They won't ever cut off your, the campaign, whatever it is at that point, stuff like that. But this campaign expansion that comes out a year later, your option is either upgrade or to stream it. And what you were talking about earlier about scalability, that only goes so far when you are tethered to a last gen hardware, because we've already seen it this gen when it comes to density, where if you're playing Crackdown 3 on an Xbox One X or a PC, the world has the traffic, pedestrians, all of that has a certain amount of density. But then if you're playing with someone on an Xbox One S or an OG Xbox, that density is lowered, and everyone is lowered to that level that
For
plays
you
with them.
as well?
Yeah. Because
That's
you guys are in a synced up co-op world. So the scalability when it comes to the graphical side scales a lot better than what it does on the game logic and CPU side. So, you can have a campaign like a Halo Infinite Series X and PC version, and then a Halo 1 version or Xbox One version. But the moment with them always wanting to have that cross-gen support and co-op play and stuff, I don't see that being a viable option, because then you're developing 2 different games. You might as well just make that one game the best it can be, and then apply those advancements, apply all that density, apply all those physics with the expansion.
In a sense, that same quote kind of talks about that too. That was this other word I focused on, where it's we want Infinite to grow over time versus going to those numbered titles and having all that segmentation that we had before. Right?
Yeah, but that could be spun around though, where you can say that to play the expansion, you have to be streaming it, so we're not segmenting you from it.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah,
they're still giving you an option.
Well,
I think we can't. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, they eventually just have to cut people off. Like, they can't expect people to be playing Xbox One games like 15 years later. Like, they just I understand. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, they're gonna make sure that you get Halo Infinite as it is when it launches, but they can't expect people to get mad if in 5 years, like, okay, well, like, it's physically impossible for the game to run on a 2013 hardware, so we have to cut you off.
What I think the key factor there is going to be is, did they provide enough support and enough content for people people to feel like their original or initial investment was worth it? Because when you see what happened with Destiny, that got supported for 2 years, maybe less. It got like the first 2 expansions, I believe, and then I think the 3rd expansion is when they dropped them. Like, they said you need to be on next gen only. But I don't recall anyone complaining about that.
Oh, you're talking about
360. I don't think anyone will complain.
Yeah, when they dropped the 360 and PS3
Honestly, I
support
completely
for Destiny.
forgot that Destiny was even on 360.
Yeah, and they supported it really well. But then I want to say it was less than 2 years even. It might have been the 2-year mark.
I don't think Taken King released on the 360 then.
Did that launch the fall of 2 years?
I believe so. That was their major expansion that people started liking the game then again.
Yeah, that was the one that they dropped. So the first one was like, wasn't it like the Mark of Wolves or something? It was like
House of Wolves,
and
then there was Dark Below.
Those two.
So in 2016 they stopped supporting it, so they supported it for 2 years.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and
I'm on
I don't
Wikipedia
recall
right now looking.
I don't recall anyone complaining about it. Plus, when we think about it,
It was Dark of Iron, by the way. That was the one where they cut it off.
Yeah, you're right. That means Taken King was on 360. That's interesting.
Huh.
Yeah.
That was the better one too.
Yeah, it was.
But by 2022, anyone that really cares about games, or 2023, let's say, anyone that really cares about games, like is that hardcore demographic, they're going to have upgraded. They're either going to have upgraded, or they're going to move over to PC or streaming, or they're just naturally not going to be happy with the Xbox One S.
I don't think
X.
anyone even now expects to have like if 3 years into the next generation, you're not expected to get these games.
No, you're expected to get like sports games, and
and
that's about
Just
it.
Dance.
Yeah.
Well, and this was a separate topic from a previous show, but that's why I think there would be some advantages to splitting the multiplayer and campaign and keep it. Well, and obviously multiplayer could be, because it's free to play, but I think multiplayer, you're probably going to want to keep that. You're going to want as many people to have as access to that as possible, at least the majority of the modes. Go ahead.
So, do you think they're never going to cut off current gen from the multiplayer?
For arena and things like that, I don't even think you really need to.
Not the existing multiplayer as is, but do you think they're ever going to evolve or expand the multiplayer where they're like, okay, if you're still on Xbox One, you can play these modes, but to play these new modes that we're introducing, or maybe new maps that are, there's going to be more flexibility because multiplayer is less demanding.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what I think. This is my theory, and I sometimes kind of prod my developer friend who plays Halo about things that are going on in the industry, and he's talked about. He doesn't say anybody's doing this. He doesn't work for 343, but he's talked in the past about non-latency sensitive things getting moved to the cloud, and he's actually stressed to me that even with the Zen 2 CPUs to do truly innovative things that are just going to blow your mind, that people are working on, like people are doing a lot of research and development on because of the potential of cloud, that you're going to see things that are going to be amazing, but they're only going to be possible streaming them, even with those Zen 2 CPUs. So what I think is that, your latency sensitive tasks, like your hit detection and things like that are still going to be localized, but you're going to start seeing like a lot of the AI and NPCs and the physics and things like that start to run off those clouds. And so like when I think of like this 10-year plan, to me, it makes sense that they're going, okay, well, for these first 2 years, we're not going to have Series X APUs in the cloud. It's going to take us a couple of years, but we can start building towards that because, it takes time. Right. So I can see them being in a situation where they start with the basics and then they introduce and say, hey, this mode's coming out next year. And then they know that they're going to have, a lot stronger back end for that. So, that's kind of what I see. Cause, we talked, when we were talking about the past, we talked about the matchmaking and how like now today that's standard stuff. But at that time that was crazy, right? Like that was just something that, at least for me, the first time I sat there with the team and we moved from game to game together, that just kind of blew my mind. And if somebody would have said something about that, before then, you would have said, no way. That would have been, that wasn't something we could have dreamt up. But I really think that right now with all their studios and the technology and their investments in cloud tech, I really do see them trying to use Halo as a platform to show that off, to innovate that, to draw attention to their competitive advantages there. Because, everybody keeps talking about, teraflops and stuff. I really think they're real technical advantages in the cloud next gen, and potentially doing some stuff with machine learning and all that, and AI, doing more advanced AI where you can run really, really complex, AI calculations in physics and not have to worry about whether your Zen 2, processor can keep up with that. So
I mean, I feel
that's
like
just kind of
not enough
go
people
ahead.
played Titanfall 1 to really realize the difference, I feel, between 1 and 2 in terms of the random AI around the maps. But the AI in Titanfall 1 was pretty good, like significantly good. I noticed the difference. They touted they're running on the power of the cloud, right? This is back in 2014, I think.
It was running Azure back then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Flight Sim is the perfect example of a lot of what we'll see next gen, like a lot of the advancements, because a lot of what you just described is in Flight Sim. Even when it comes down to, you have the choice to do CPU traffic or cloud traffic or no traffic. And from what I understand, if you don't have it running on the cloud, you have it running on your CPU. And even in the game is CPU bound anyways on your high end CPUs and PCs today.
Yeah.
It's a huge performance drain.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that where, plus you have like the cloud driven weather, stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, I mean, my only hope is that they don't lock the campaign behind like a cloud driven, technology, because then that's no different than like online DRM in a way. Like if my internet goes out, I'd still like to be able to play through the campaign.
Having things
I
that
doubt they
enhance
do
the
that.
campaign. Yeah, I don't think it would be necessary. I think it just help.
Yeah, I'm with you, Don. I feel like there's going to be we're not connected to the internet, and now we are kind of mode, because, and I guess that's the question for everybody. I mean, if it enhanced the game a lot, and you're running non-latency sensitive things, so you're not really feeling it in your movements and things like that. Because I think that's where I don't like to. Currently, when I play anything that's on the cloud, well, number one, I think our latency is a lot higher than it will be in a few years. But the other aspect is it's like, you want that responsiveness with that controller. But if you're talking about physics or buildings falling down or a bunch of NPCs running around on the screen and things like that, you can do that and run that stuff off the cloud. So, I mean, would you guys be open to that kind of thing in your campaign if you got to see things that were not possible locally?
Like, would I be up for it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as I'm given the option, I'm fine with a slightly lesser experience offline only. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
So before we move on, I do want to just, because we talk a lot about multiplayer, is there anything that you hope to see them really, if you could pick one thing for them to advance in a campaign on a technical level, graphics, AI, physics, whatever, what would you guys each like to see? And I'll go ahead and we'll start with Jesse. He's been a little quiet.
What I want them to add?
Yeah, or where would you like to see them make the biggest stride on a technical level in the campaign for Halo Infinite?
Scope, really. Like having those big ass sandboxes, having areas on the map that you work towards that are like this finely crafted fighting area, but also having those huge vistas, these big ass air battles around huge ground battles, like just tons of stuff going on. Not all the time, scenarios where it works best, and it's just this humongous fight that actually feels like a war for the first time instead of a little skirmish, because that's what games could do on that hardware before. Like,
that's really
we
good.
have the biggest thing possible with this engine. I have taken that to mean, what if we have 100, 200 people in a fight? Stuff like that would greatly benefit from the cloud. Say, when you're running it locally, you've got 50 or 100 people, but if you're running it on the cloud, could you have 500? If you're able to offload a bunch of stuff, as an idiot who doesn't know how to code, that's what I want.
Like, imagine seeing like a sea of grunts. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
That would be pretty badass. Especially if they gave you something that you could just take them
like a rocket launcher.
There's friggin'
infinite ammo.
We'll go over the new book once everyone's done with it.
Oh, I need to finish that damn thing.
Like big ass air battles mixed with ground combat. That's what gets me with Battlefield. Like, I love Battlefield 5 because it is the only place you find those only in Battlefield moments of I'm running and gunning at this friggin' tank with all my gadgets trying to take it down, and then all of a sudden I get slammed into by a freaking bomber that just got blown up by anti-air 400 meters behind me. It's just crazy stuff on massive scale would be what I really want the most.
Oh, you kind of sold me there. How about so anything different from you?
Kinda. I mean, I was gonna say AI initially, and it ties in with Jesse's point of these huge battles. One of my biggest hopes in Infinite is multiple factions, right? Multiple, what's the word? Aggressive factions, or like they're each have their own thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I want to be able to go into like a firefight and like take advantage of the fact that these guys are fighting these guys, those guys are fighting these guys, that kind of thing. But if I did have to pick one, it'd be physics. I want to be able to do things that aren't scripted per se. You know what I mean? Like if you played a little bit of Prey, that kind of thing. Not necessarily at that level. But I want to be able to, I don't know, take some guy out, or if I blow up a turret, I wanted to be able to fall down and like crush other enemies underneath them, that kind of thing.
Those are two really good ones. All right, how about you, Proven?
Well, I would love if they could somehow implement some sort of like random encounter, because the thing about open world games I like is there's a chance that something happens that you don't expect. Because if you go replay any Halos, you kind of know, you basically know where all the enemies are. You know where they're going to be. You know basically what they're going to do. I'd really like if they can somehow implement some sort of random encounters or roaming enemies, so you don't know where they're at all times. You kind of just happen upon them. I think that'd be really interesting.
That's actually a really great idea. Something that's a little bit more, because we think about Halo, we think about it being dynamic, right? So that just adds another layer to that. How about you, Mike? Yeah. What do you want to see?
I want to see a true next gen evolution of the Halo CE sandbox, and I'm going to kind of cheat in saying that because that encompasses everything from AI, physics, scope, stuff like that. But I mean, I really do mean just a sandbox in general. I don't know who follows me on Twitter, but it was like a couple days ago where I retweeted someone posting on Halo CE where what's that snow level? Is it Truth and Reconciliation or no? Not Truth and Reconciliation.
Assault on the Cartographer.
It might have been that. It's the one with the Banshees where you're flying the Banshees. So the second one.
I think that's
you found them a couple times. Ones where you're not supposed to get in it. You know, you rush the door and the guys.
The second one's at night, though, right?
You're right. Yeah, one of them's at night. One.
Yeah, I think it's the second one, but
someone. Trails.
Yeah.
He had a Banshee on one of those platforms that you're usually fighting, like the Sentinels, and he landed the Banshee, and then I think he had a rocket launcher, and he shot the rocket launcher at the Banshee, and he called it Hunter Bowling. And literally, it was like 2,000 yards that this Banshee is just flipping through the air, and it knocks down on the ground and wipes out two hunters, like down on the ground where there was usually like the tank or whatever, that big area right outside the control room. It just I would love to see Combat Evolved was the perfect subtitle for Halo.
And emergent gameplay, things that aren't planned, they just
thank you.
You have a great set of tools.
I was thinking procedural, but I knew that wouldn't come off right. But emergent gameplay, where one of the early concepts for Halo 2 was if you're attacking this base or whatnot, or if you're attacking this group of enemies, they can call in reinforcements from a different area of the map. And I'm not talking about, them randomly spawning enemies, but literally where, if someone like Bethesda with their jank engine can have
Bethesda can do it. Anybody can.
Yeah, I mean, their Radiant AI is an impressive piece of technology. Where, granted, that person that's out in the woods hunting deer, they're not modeled and rendered, but there is a piece of the program that keeps AI location flagged. You know what I mean? And it's not actually put in the memory and whatnot until you actually go in that area. But I would love to see an evolution of, why can't we have these open areas where AI is somewhat doing something, even a very, very simple form, and then they get called in because they hear something, some kind of big explosion or something. Like, I would love to see stuff like reinforcements that's being called by the AI and not scripted.
And you could technically take out those reinforcements beforehand if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
You go in and
we've
there's
seen
nothing to call.
games.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen games where, there's an alarm or something, or what we've seen in Crisis where they can shoot up the flare.
Division 2 is got something like that, where they have patrols that are constantly going in between checkpoints. And if you want a checkpoint, to be easier to take, you take out the patrol that's going to it first, so that you don't have to worry about them coming when you're getting called for more help when you're going after it.
But, in order to have emergent gameplay like that, and also like a more fleshed out sandbox, because you look at something like Halo 5, you couldn't do what I just described that guy did in Halo CE.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
That whole entire sandbox has been completely lost.
It's interesting when we kind of keep going back, and I guess it makes it ironic too that everybody keeps talking about the damn graphics in the game, and I get that it like that's what you're looking for in a new system, but yeah, it's like you go back and it's like, remember in Halo CE how the physics, how you had emergent gameplay from that, and how the AI created emergent gameplay, and the wider world created it. So I think Mike, I think you kind of hit it, but it blends everything you guys are saying.
Yeah,
I think
it's sandboxes inside of sandboxes inside of sandboxes. It's like this infinity mirror of sandboxes that kind of feed into each other.
And all the weapons kind of play off each other. It's not like, oh, we need to get this one because there was that enemy on the screen, or get the most powerful. It wasn't like that. It's like, oh, you pick up this. Well, when I have this weapon, I have an advantage in this situation. If I have this weapon, then I really need to, get into, it's like there's a situation that you could even kind of create. And I think that 343's never been able to capture that aspect, like that balance within the campaign. I think they get it now because they've heard the feedback.
And Jesse hit it on the nail earlier when he talked about his innovations and stuff in the past, of how he's able to play so many hours of the campaign. I was exactly the same way, especially with Halo CE, but also with Halo Reach, or I'm sorry, Halo 3. One of the strengths with Halo was that no two battles would play out the same.
Yeah.
And you can see the battles kind of form like I don't want to say a ballet, but kind of like a play. Whereas now, especially with Halo 5, it's more like a clusterfuck. Like there's so much, it's like stupid AI, and they're just overpowering you with numbers instead of an actual you thinking that you're fighting against an actual smart enemy.
Like one of the examples I feel that works really well is it's in Halo 3. I think it's Salvo Highway, the mission. I was playing at Legendary, and the time when you go in and there's a little hill, there's a couple rates on top of the hill, and there's choppers all around it.
Yeah.
Right? I've died so many times in that, but every time you die, you do something different. You're like, okay, let me go this way. Let me try to take this guy out here. Let me do this instead, to try and like change what you do. And you're right, actually. I like Halo 5. I'm a huge fan. But you're right in that a lot of times Halo 5, when I die, I come back, it's just me just trying to be better. Just trying to aim better. You know what I mean? I'm still taking the same directions. I'm still taking the same path. I'm just trying to hit them more than I did before, when that wasn't the case a lot of times in the previous games.
Whereas, but like, look at us the other day when we played, or the other week, I should say. Even if we tried different things, it all just amounted to us
moving forward.
getting
That's it.
Getting carried by me.
No, I understand.
But
yeah.
I mean, it all just came to us getting overwhelmed. It didn't come to us getting outsmarted by an AI.
Right.
It didn't come to us from, and what if we kept on doing the same thing, we would likely come to the same outcome. Whereas in previous Halos, you can keep trying to do the same thing, but the AI would noticeably react in a different way that would just completely change the flow of the battle.
Each one of us.
Yeah, it was a little bit
Sorry,
like a dice roll or something.
Yep.
It felt like, in
Yeah,
terms of how things
you
would go.
can think that you're going to throw this grenade at this elite, and it's going to die behind a rock. But then the next time you do the exact same thing, instead he dives the other way and throws the grenade back or something. Like it's not scripted in any of the games.
Every one of us have gotten the point where we take out a group, we're looking away, and just blown up by a wraith shot from nowhere. You have no idea where it comes from, but now you know, right? You make sure to dodge it or move around it.
So
it's got more scripted. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the CPUs did get so out of balance. They had to cut things because it's weird. It's weird that Halo CE, a game that came out in 2001, feels more emergent today than the 5 does. And by the way, I noticed how good we were doing on not swearing until somebody said Halo 5 campaign. So sorry about that.
So honestly, just take the Halo gameplay principles and apply next gen or even current gen resources to that. That's what I want.
Like visuals, this whole conversation just makes me realize how irritated I am that people keep focusing on the damn visuals.
Same here. I feel like that we could almost do a whole other show on that.
Look at Assassin's Creed Valhalla in June. Look at Assassin's Creed Valhalla this week. It's one of the nicest looking things I've ever seen. Running 60 frames per second, looking gorgeous.
Look at what?
Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Xbox Series X gameplay.
Do you remember the first look we had of AC Valhalla? It didn't look good back in the June.
It looked worse than Odyssey, and it ran like 30 seconds. Now it looks better, and it's a gorgeous 60 on console.
I just hope they don't. Yeah, I just hope they don't overcompensate, take the feedback and they're like, hey, okay, we're going to scale back some of this AI. Because like we all said there, at least for now, it has to run on the old Jaguar. So I don't want them scaling back the AI, or if there was maybe some physics in there that no longer going to be in there or something like that. Because at the end of the day, you get used to the graphics. It's what really the gameplay brings you back.
This is more about finishing and less about changing. So it's just, let's have the more complete package with the complete, ray tracings in style graphics, not let's really tinker with things.
Yep.
It's let's get a new lead who is very good and very competent at finishing projects and making sure they stay focused on what they need to do. And then he moves on to his next thing, and he's excellent at it in Joe Staten.
Yeah. One of the reasons
great job transitioning there, Jesse.
I was going to try and catch it before you transitioned.
do you have any last statements? We do need to wrap up this topic.
One last statement was one of the things I had when I was watching the Halo, and one of the reasons why I'm not that worried regarding Halo Infinite's gameplay is because when I was watching the campaign, the visuals, they weren't the greatest, but what stuck out to me was just how fun it looked. You know what I mean? How much it felt like they actually nailed it finally. And of course,
Infinite is the closest they've come to that whole sandbox that we were talking about.
But that's all.
Let me give Austin a last word too, because I didn't ask him this last round. What do you think, man? Any last thoughts on that?
Oh, I was busy thinking about the next topic. I honestly forgot what we were talking about.
Well, let's go ahead. Hey, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and start off the next topic for us, Austin?
Since you had so much time to think about it.
Yes, I guess awkward transition to Chris Lee leaving or / getting fired / removed from 343, and he's moving on. He's still with Microsoft, but he just left 343. And I guess we're gonna talk about our feelings about it.
Why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
To me, it just depends. Yeah. Well, I have two thoughts. One, I don't like. At first, I was a little bit worried about what it meant, but it just depends. Like, if the game is good, then it's like, okay, well, this was a good move because Joe Staten came in and saved the game. And if the game for some reason is bad, it's like, okay, well, maybe this was a sign that the game was really in trouble. But we're not going to know until the game comes out. But number two, it was more just this kind of made me a little bit it made me not sad, but a little just confused because the thing I'm gonna pose a question to you guys. Like, when you guys think of 343, like, who do you guys think of? Like, a developer, or who do you guys think of, like, is the voice of 343?
Cortana's butt from Halo 4.
Honestly, probably Sketch or Frankie.
Yeah, Sketch or Frankie.
Yeah.
Kiki Wolfkill.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
monsters are named around.
Any of the front figures or whatever you want to call it. The people that have been in camera
that's kind
mode.
of who I came up to. Like, I think of Bonnie Ross, Frank O'Connor, but the thing is, those guys don't really have much input into the actual game. Like, I think Frank O'Connor kind of is about the lore and the story of the game. Bonnie Ross is just like the head of like the business of 343. But when I think of like 343 and like actually making the games, like, I don't really know who to think of. And when Chris Lee came aboard, I was actually like, it felt nice knowing that Chris Lee was there because I've listened to him talk about Halo, and I agree with a lot of things he said about the game. So I was really looking forward to him taking over 343 and hopefully having his vision going forward. And now that he's left, like, we have Joe Staten, but we know he's gonna leave. So that's kind of where I'm a little discouraged because, like, I just don't know who is going to be the voice of the actual game for Halo going forward.
Yeah, we don't know how it's going to go after this, but there's no reason to think Chris Lee's work and the people, it's still a part of what this game is.
Yeah.
It doesn't just disappear.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just thinking, like, after the game comes out, like, whose vision is it? Like, we're not going to know because we don't know who's going to be leading the team.
I didn't
it all, none of us are going to know because none of us are part of the team. But, like, we've all discussed, even tonight, we've all discussed ideas that many Halo fans or topics that many Halo fans would probably think, like, yeah, that's a great idea. Do that. I think but that doesn't mean that any one of us would be a good campaign lead or studio lead. And, I just like you said, Proven, I've listened to a lot of what Chris Lee has said too. And I mean, it's clear that, he's got a good head on, he's got a good understanding of what makes a good Halo game, but that may not necessarily mean that he's still a good project lead. So, a lot of, I would, just like Jesse said, I imagine a lot of the work that he's done that contributed, because for all we know, maybe the gameplay that we were talking about, the sandbox gameplay that we just said is the closest to the classic Halos. Maybe that's a contribution of Chris Lee, but maybe, he doesn't know how to tie in, or he wasn't the person to unify the team, to tie the different factors or different disciplines within the game in a cohesive way. So, it's really hard to, I understand the whole concern there. I do, because, when you look at classic Bungie, we had, Jason Jones, we had Joseph Staten, we had, what's that dude with the black hair? He's kind of like a dick, but still, I think he, I'm talking. He's still with Bungie too. He's the one that kind of was snotty towards Destiny 2 fans when they were complaining.
I don't remember. Okay.
But there's certain, and you can kind of say the same thing about a lot of other studios too, where but I would imagine that one of Joseph's goals or assignments or whatever you want to call it, he's not going to leave the studio in tatters. He's not going to leave the studio without a clear direction for it.
Yeah.
So, I think we've discussed it before, and I understand the concerns, and I definitely do agree to some extent. But the moment that Joseph Staten came on board, Chris's departure, the writing was kind of on the wall to me. And I one of us may have even questioned, like, what does that mean about Chris Lee whenever we discussed Joseph joining? And, these few months between Joseph joining and Chris leaving could have been Chris getting Joseph up, up to speed of the current status of the project. And maybe, bouncing some ideas and whatnot. And, it could, granted, it's likely that Chris was pushed out. That's just corporate talk whenever they're talking about. But it could have been the case where Chris may have felt like he wasn't needed with Joseph taking over the reins. It could have possibly. We'll find out soon enough. If Chris Lee goes to another studio, then great. That sounds like a win-win situation where he's still being utilized within Microsoft. He's still making games. He can take his talents elsewhere and still benefit whatever studio or team he joins. But if he ends up leaving Microsoft within 6 months to a year, it was probably just a courtesy move just to make it not seem horrible. But yeah, I don't know. Chris Lee, it's not. I
think you make some good points. Oh, were you going to jump in there? Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, I was going to just follow up to your point. Like, to me, like, I'm not worried about Infinite. Like, I think the game, like, his vision is going to live on, and whatever his vision was for the game is still going to be there. It's more of just, like, I didn't really like the people who made Halo 4 and 5. Like, no offense to them, I didn't agree with their vision of Halo. And to me, Chris Lee kind of, like, when I listened to him talk about it, I was like, I agree with how he sees Halo is how I see Halo, and, like, what he likes about it is what I like about it. So it's more of just, like, with him leaving, it's like, okay, now we're gonna, like, if Joseph Staten came in and was, like, taking over 343 for good or whatever, then that would be great, because I know he knows a good Halo.
I agree.
But the thing is, I just don't, like, after Chris Lee, like, I just don't know who's going to take over. And the thing about Halo, like, Halo's such a big IP that I would expect, like the world's best developers and, like, the best visionaries to, like, want to lead the project. The thing is, I just don't know, like, who's going to step up and take over Halo, and are they qualified to do it? Like, we don't know yet.
Well, they kind of did that they tried to do it with Halo 4. I mean, they threw unlimited funds at developers and the project.
Yeah, but the thing is, I just don't think the people the leads for those projects, in my opinion, weren't the right people.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it really Bonnie doesn't have any creative input in Halo. At least I don't think she does. But she is kind of like the general manager hiring the coach, right?
Yeah.
On a sports team, and it's like, if you keep missing on your coach and your superstars, then then that a lot of times that falls on you. So I do kind of wonder about that a little bit. But I hadn't heard from Sol at all. Did you have any thoughts on this, man?
I mean, I think my thoughts kind of aligned with John's on the main podcast, where basically we know too little to really make any definite conclusions, is my opinion.
Yeah.
For all we know, he had other reasons to leave 343, or he couldn't commit the time into it or whatnot. You know what I mean? I think if Halo Infinite still releases within, like, Q2 next year, like May or whatever our initial release date, then I think it wasn't like he was kicked out or pushed out. But I do think if it gets delayed even further, also I think if it releases, like, in May, that is still Chris Lee's Halo. You know,
it is. Yeah.
You say you don't think we know enough, kind of like we don't know enough about armor coatings.
Yes.
We're not ready for that. I need my
if Infinite releases, like, later, like fall or winterish, then I think something may have been up. Yeah.
All right. I think what Jesse's trying to do is he's trying to move us along here, because we're kind of running along.
Transition, and I attempted.
I mean, did Jesse share his thoughts though?
He did. I don't think I got too many thoughts in.
Yeah, Mike.
I think it's real quick. Just a couple thoughts on this. I do think a lot of times what ends up happening with all of us kind of speculators, is we're trying to play like this version of video game rumor algebra, but we're trying to solve for X, Y, and Z. Like we don't really have enough of the facts to really make a conclusion. I think when you step back though and you kind of think about it, like at the end of the day, whenever you change over leadership, it's difficult within a big project, and it doesn't really matter what the reason is. If you change it in the last year and a half, that's going to be tough, and they've changed a few times, so that's an issue. But in terms of what does that mean for Halo, I think like the one thing that was bothering me is, number one, is everybody assuming, first of all, he just got fired. Number two, assuming that Halo was on fire. It's like, because you can't really conclude either one of those. Because like you're saying, if it releases in 6 months, it probably is it's what Colbrow said, where he put it out there that the game is content complete, and we had now heard from what was his name on the team that was saying that he's playing through the campaign. He just made it to the halfway point in the game. So you got all these things out here that are kind of indicating that it really is technical. So I mean, it could just be when you're a leader, you're responsible for the vision, and you got to do a good job there, but you're also responsible for execution. So the fact that it is late and it's probably costs in millions and millions of dollars, it could just be that, right? Or it could just be one of those things where you're a leader in that position, and just like Josh Holmes when he did his exit interview, he's just like, I don't want to go back to that life again. That AAA, that kind of pressure. He's like, wasn't fun anymore. Right. So I think that could happen. And that's why you see sometimes developers leave AAA teams and they go to, smaller projects, is because they just don't, like, it basically becomes a job and it's no longer, this art form, or they lose their passion because of the pressure and everything. So I only throw all that out there. I'm not saying I know what the answer is, because I'm not an insider and I haven't heard anything, but at the same time, there's a lot of different ways that could go, and I think we make a lot of we've made everybody, it seems like in the community, has made it's done a lot of speculating.
I mean, if people speculate that Rare is having trouble because one person left, yeah,
right, one person is there very many years.
There is so that's just movement in the video game developer industry. People change teams and projects, and
people just love drama. That's it. They just want to see.
But there's a lot of reasons. It could be, right. It could be problems. It could be they found something and it's going to be delayed longer. So that's a possibility. Yeah. But I just think that automatically jumping on that conclusion, I don't think you can do that. And I think as things have leaked out over the last previous days, and you got somebody at 343 saying, "Hey, I'm playing through the campaign." And we've heard multiple times that it was, content complete. That tells you that, hey, Chris Lee's vision is still, that is what Halo is. So nothing's changing from that, right?
Yeah, I think the assumptions were basically solely on the fact that 343 has kind of built up a little bit of a negative reputation in some aspects, where like people always assume the worst with them. So if someone leaves, it's like, oh my god, it's because the game's like horrible. Like, when it could just be he wanted to leave because he wanted to go do something else. Like, it could be anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of different things. It could just be it just took its toll, or it could just be maybe it is time, or maybe he didn't, maybe there wasn't good enough communication, and there could be other management changes. I do agree with you though, Austin, when you said Stanton is somebody you trust. It's like, when I heard he was on there, I was like, oh, good. It made me feel really good about about the leadership, because you do have now some old Bungie leads in there with Stanton and Max Hoberman on the multiplayer. And I know he's not the lead, but I think he's got a significant portion of the sandbox that aspect. And I think that's really important. So they do have some really good top of the industry creative leads, some people that understand Halo now. But it's just, it really is, it is really a situation that we just don't know the information. And I think we'll probably find out pretty soon,
hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't see anything on it this year, then I'm going to start assuming that there was more problems. But yeah, anything is possible, I guess, right? Any last thought? I know, like we're kind of running a little bit long. Any last thoughts on Chris Lee, or you want to move on to some of the community questions real quick?
We can move on unless anyone else has anything.
Okay. No, we'll do that. We'll move on. We did have some other news things. We can save some of the stuff for down the road, but there is just real quickly mention. There's the upgrades, the remaster to the remaster of Halo Master Chief Collection. Anybody got any thoughts on that?
Half the reason I got 120 hertz monitor is to play these games at 120 FPS. I cannot freaking wait.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Oh, FOV slider. That is the
FOV
thing.
slider. Yep.
That's as big as a freaking awesome frame rate. Finally, an FOV slider.
Split screen improvements is going to be huge for me.
Yeah.
Finally having Halo CE and 2 not run like dog doo-doo in their prettier graphics modes.
That's what I'm
the
kind of
big thing for me is oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's just the pre. I mean, I have a 144 hertz monitor that I might play sometimes, or play on, but I'll mostly play on my 4K HDR TV, and that's only 60 hertz. So the benefits that I can get at 60 frames probably interest me more than the 120 frames.
Yep, looks like there's a little something for everybody in it. But I'm really happy about it. I think at the end of the day, what it just shows is that we've seen now Microsoft in multiple first-party games, not second-party, but first-party games. They've really done a good job supporting their franchises. And as bad as MCC was to begin, it just the continued support it keeps getting, time after time, whenever there's an opportunity, I think is very encouraging for Halo Infinite as well. It kind of gives you more confidence that we'll see, as they get better at ray tracing, you might see better lighting in that game in the future, things like that. So anybody have any other thoughts on MCC upgrades?
It's fun.
Proven.
We covered it a little bit last episode too.
Proven has something to say, I thought.
Yeah.
Oh,
honestly, the best thing for me is just the FOV slider, because I don't know if you guys have played the Halo 3, like the new the ODST Slayer mode.
no.
But the FOV on the pistol is like horrible. Like you can't even see the back of the gun. That's how bad the FOV is for that.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking forward, because I believe Halo 3 is like 65 or 70 FOV or something horrible. So I'm gonna push that back to 90 and play it that way.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like to see as much as I can see. That's honestly like why I hate, even in Halo 5, like grabbing some of the big weapons, you can't see anything on the screen. That's like that
and the Halo 5 sniper is so big, taking up half the screen anyways.
Right.
As far as community questions go, I do think we waited way too late to ask.
Yes.
And the only one we have is literally something we already answered. So we apologize for that. We will ask sooner in the future. So there is.
Who was it that asked our question? So we at least give a shout out to well, we actually had two questions. So we had we had one that came on, we had one that came in from Andrew Schmidt. What kind of visual enhancement? Oh, did you?
Yeah, we've answered that like I think twice already.
Yeah, we definitely answered that a lot in this episode.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
Go back and listen to our other podcast.
His brother is John Jacob Jingleheimer.
Honestly, we were sitting there talking about it today. When you talk about visual enhancements, it really was what you were describing, Jesse. Lots of stuff, right? Like just that's exciting to kind of see, to hit a battlefield and see a lot of density. So people always think about textures and hair on, Craig needs some hair, but that doesn't really change the game.
People like their bull shots. They like, I got this one picture and this picture is so pretty, and you don't play pictures, you play moving moving screens.
Yeah.
It would be nice for it to have a good theater mode or screenshot mode.
Yeah, actually that would be kind of cool. But then again, it's not that kind of game, I don't think. But that would be interesting. All right. Any other news items? Anybody have any other thoughts? Did I not give anybody a chance to get
Tikka
their thoughts
masala
in?
is delicious.
Huh?
Chicken tikka masala is very tasty. I made it for dinner tonight.
It's
That's the
amazing.
only thought.
Yes.
I think with
I
that,
thought he was talking about a human being. I was like, oh my god.
This chick named Tikka Masala, she's really nice.
oh man. All right. Well, I think with that, I think that's our cue to wrap it up. So,
Well, I'm hungry, so
yeah, it's about time.
thank you guys for listening or watching. As you know, if you enjoy our content, please let us know in the comments. Anything, honestly, any kind of feedback at all. I'm too loud. I'm not loud enough. Jesse has a terrible Australian accent. I don't know. Anything. Let
Mike
us know.
needs better opinions.
Yeah, maybe.
Just kidding.
That's it. I never said.
What was I gonna say? If you really enjoy our content, we have a Patreon. It's in the description. It's on the website. But yeah, thank you for listening or watching.
I also
Or
want to say definitely check out our sister podcast
Yes.
that they'll be on next Sunday, every other Sunday opposite of ours.
Can we really say this? They never say it for us.
Yeah, to be honest, I'd rather they say it first.
No, they mentioned it before.
No, they do say it for us.
Don't say it.
Scratch that. We need. If you only got time to listen to one, listen to ours. No.
Yeah, that's
If you want, watch the next episode of the XboxEra podcast to get some more Elden Ring updates.
Nick will literally kill you.
Your move, Nick.
Oh man. Well, it's we got only a few days left to next gen. So everybody, by the time we talk to you next time, you'll have had a chance to play the MCC collection at 120 or whatever.
Console
Should we
ever
plug the
ships.
stream this Tuesday?
What's up?
Should we plug the stream this Tuesday?
Yeah.
I'm
If
gonna
you're
stream.
listening this Sunday, then Mike is going to be streaming on the XboxEra channel
Hmm.
quite a bit.
Launch
I
stream.
get my system and I'll join him.
Yeah, I'll be streaming a good handful of next gen games, probably Watch Dogs, Assassin's Creed. I already got Dirt 5,
Nice.
some other
Those are-
games, and a whole handful of backwards
I'm going to
compatible
counter
games.
stream you and play Valhalla on my channel. For viewers.
You know, despite the fact that there really isn't any major exclusives at the launch, there is some really good third parties coming out here in the next few weeks. So it's going to be fun. Good time for gaming. So I hope everybody who wanted the next gen on day one is lucky enough to get it. If not, hopefully you get it soon. But thanks for joining us today, and we will catch you again soon.
Thanks for listening.
Take care.
Later, guys.
Bye.